The All Star Game is fast approaching, and there is one rule that needs to be changed immediately. People are saying Caleb Williams is already the best quarterback in the NFC North, but they're just basing that on potential, right? And Stephen Curry is saying the Warriors will be the last dynasty that will exist in the NBA, and I think he might be right. That and more coming up on Sports Talk with Dad right now. Welcome back to another amazing episode of Sports Talk with Dad. As always, my name is Kyle, and I cannot call this Sports Talk with Dad without the man sitting next to me, a man so old that he shows us every single week that he is quickly losing his mind. My dad, Tim.
I think I'm losing my mind. You don't need to take my car keys yet or anything like that.
I've questioned having the conversation.
Yeah, so is your sister and your brother.
Well,
they don't like nobody likes driving with me, and I'm a good driver.
Because you do this. And it's terrifying. You ride, like you can't see it from the driver's side, but as a passenger side, I see how close we are to that dotted line. And it's terrifying.
That's not true.
It is.
I'm a very good driver.
True.
I would pass the driver's test today. What was your point?
Well, I want to see. I can't prove you're driving. People just have to take my word on it that you're bad at it. But what I want to take today is something you apparently don't have to take to be president of the United States, which is a cognitive test. But it is more important to run a sports show than it is to be the president of the United States. So we need to make sure your mind is clear.
Got it.
A couple weeks ago, we were talking about baseball teams that could possibly move very shortly. If you remember, we talked about the Royals, we talked about the White Sox, and we talked about the Tampa Bay Rays.
We should have also talked about the Miami Marlins, who just need to be contracted, but we didn't get that far.
Well, let's see if that's the case.
Okay.
So looking at this, I went through attendance records, and I specifically looked at last year because I know you can't think back more than at least or most a year. So I just want to do last year. Simple test. I wanted to see if you could name the bottom 10 teams for attendance in 2023.
Okay. Number one would be Oakland.
It is Oakland. Last year, they had less than 1 million people show up to their games. 81 games, by the way, is what this is based off of. On average, they had 10,276.
And don't forget, that 10,000 includes all the season tickets that they sold, that they get to count for every game. There were times when I'd see an A's game, and it looked like there was 500 people in that stadium.
I'm assuming this counts the season tickets.
It does. Yes. It does for a fact.
Okay.
Miami Marlins would be my number two.
2 for 2. The Miami Marlins had 1,162,000, 14,000 a game on average.
Okay, we'll just keep going. Kansas City.
Kansas City is number 3 lowest attendance. Well done.
Wow. That surprised me because I thought Tampa Bay would be number 3.
1,300,000 for Kansas City, 16,136 per game.
Tampa Bay on the list.
Tampa Bay is number 4, 1,400,000 people, 17,700 per game. You're 4 for 4.
Yeah, well, now it's going to start getting tough. Let's just keep talking about the teams we talked about in that episode and go with the Chicago White Sox.
The Chicago White Sox are number 7, right? 10, 9, 8, 7. Yes, I can count. They are number 7 on the list, had 1,600,000, 20,600 per game.
Okay. Because they changed their name and they shouldn't have, the Cleveland Indians.
The Cleveland Guardians, yes. 1,800,000, 22,600 per game. You haven't missed yet. This is
yeah, well, it's going to end pretty soon. Detroit Tigers.
Detroit Tigers are number 5 lowest attendance. 1,600,000, 19,900 per game. I did not think you'd do this well at this. I'm not going to lie. I thought this would be much harder for you.
Now I'm going to start to get tough. We can eliminate teams like the Dodgers, who probably are number 1, and St. Louis.
Dodgers are number 1. St. Louis is number 4 in attendance.
San Diego is going to be up there.
San Diego's number 2.
Let's think of some bad teams from last year. They've got a great stadium, so I don't think they're going to be on the list, but Baltimore.
Baltimore is number 10.
Wow.
1,900,000, 23,900 per game last year.
Minnesota.
Minnesota is actually pretty high on this list so they're not in the bottom 10.
Okay.
They're pretty low, I should say, on this.
I just figured they'd get washed out in that cold stadium. People wouldn't go.
Yeah. They were the 12th lowest, so they're just outside the top.
Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh is number 6 on the list. 1,620,20,131 per game last year.
It'd be very sad if this team is on the list. Cincinnati.
Cincinnati is not on the list. They are 13th lowest,
That's
just
sad.
outside the top 10.
That's sad. They were a bad team. Washington Nationals.
Washington Nationals are number 9, 1,823,035 on average last year. All right, so your cognitive ability is better than I thought it would be.
How many of them am I missing?
None.
Oh, I got them?
You got them all.
Oh, because I know I was going to go to Arizona and Denver. And
Arizona was 11.
Milwaukee.
Colorado's actually pretty high up there in overall attendance, and the Brewers are about middle.
yeah, if they had a better stadium, they'd have better attendance. I just don't like it.
Brewers
American
dropped
family.
year over year last year. They went down.
Team wasn't as good, and look who's their manager.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Let's.
Have you seen where the Cubs are in the standings, by the way? I love the Cubs. I don't like what's happened to the Cubs. They're 11 games out.
Let's talk about this.
Okay.
I don't mind Moneyball and analytics when it comes to other people's team. When it comes to my team, I'm over this. I am over this. I called this from the beginning with the Cubs. I said this is going to be a nightmare because you had a team that had 90 wins last year and had all the momentum, and then you fire the leader of that team who won with a team that wasn't supposed to win and fired him for a guy who's never won with teams that were supposed to win.
Mm-hmm.
This guy has done nothing in his career. Nothing. He's not even as good as Harvey Keene in 1982. While they didn't win anything, they at least won an AL pennant and made it to a World Series. The one time Craig Counsell has been to a National League pennant, he lost because he out-analyticed himself and was stupid.
Yes, he was.
When it came to Zach Greinke and how he used him. That was the dumbest thing that has ever been done. And what has he done since? He is 0-9 in his last 9 playoff games. And he's now the last place Central team. He is behind the Cincinnati Reds and the Pittsburgh Pirates. Nothing against their organizations, but everything against my teams being behind those organizations. The Cardinals are terrible, and they're still better than the Cubs. This is absolutely ridiculous. It's the same team. It's the same team. But the problem is you have these stupid analytics that tell you what to do, and you don't follow your gut at all. He has no people skills. This is a robot umpiring a team, and this never works.
Which is amazing considering he was a ball boy on that 82 team, and you had Harvey Keene managing it, who is the definition of managed by your gut.
Well, him being a ball boy is why they lost. Because this is absolute travesty. Listen, I watched Moneyball the other night. I was bored one night. I couldn't sleep. And so I'm like, I'll turn on a movie. Great movie. Great for Hollywood. But you know what Hollywood doesn't translate to? Real life.
Mm-hmm.
I hate to tell you this. The Avengers aren't real, and neither is Moneyball. Because they stop after a winning streak of whatever, 23 games or whatever it was. What they don't show you is the fact that they got swept out of the first round in the playoffs. What they don't show you is the Oakland A's have been a terrible team ever since that happened. They're moving for a reason because they are dog shit, because they are the worst organization in baseball, because they get controlled by a guy who listens to a math formula created by a janitor. Nothing against janitors here, but they don't know anything about baseball, and a math problem doesn't solve real life. This is an absolute travesty. He has players coming off the field yelling at managers and players because of what's going on right now. He has a team that he should be winning with.
They should at least be middle of the pack.
I mean, we had a guy that had a .89 ERA, and all of a sudden he gets his innings counted. And now he's not as good anymore. Well, this is ridiculous.
And he's also the guy who had a rookie pitcher having a no-hitter through 7, and what does he do? He pulls him. Karma's going to come back and bite you in the ass for that one.
This is the 8th time he's done this. Maybe not 8th, I'm exaggerating, but I know of at least 3 other times he's done this. How many combined no-hitters has this guy had in his team?
There's no such stat as combined no-hitter.
It's a joke. This is a clown show. I called this at the beginning of the year. I said this team is going to take a huge step back, and they have, because robots don't umpire games for a reason. So why, like, we have a formula that has proven time and time again that doesn't work. And yet people keep following it. And again, it's nice and cute when it happens to the A's. The Brewers go ahead and live and die by it. But when it comes to my team, we are here to play baseball. This is the oldest team in Major League Baseball. They've been around since 1876. And they've played real baseball for a very long time. Go back to playing real baseball. Hire back David Ross, who knows this team, who won with this team, who was 1 win away from making the playoffs with a team that shouldn't have won anything. And now we're stuck with this garbage.
And the guy who replaced Counsell in Milwaukee, while he does look at analytics, manages much more by his gut, and they're playing really, really well.
Look what they're doing with the whole run past the double play thing. Have you seen this? Mm-hmm. For those of you that haven't seen this, there is a trend in baseball now where they have proven it's faster to get to the bag by running through it rather than sliding.
It always has been.
So science has prevailed. A curveball exists, and it's faster to run through a base. Now we know. But when a ground ball is hit and there's a man on third, if the double play is thrown before the guy crosses the plate, the run doesn't count. And so what the Brewers started doing, and other teams have started to do as well, is they are running past second base, so they're safe at second base, running towards third base. They're going to be called out, but the guy at first is safe, and the run scores.
Exactly. It's very smart baseball.
It's very smart baseball. You know who doesn't do that? The Chicago Cubs. Because if it's not on a tablet, we don't do it. I'm over the stupid experiment. I'm done with it. Why the Ricketts would make this call, I don't know.
I don't know either.
The Mets didn't want him, which was his old boss, by the way, said, nah, we're good. You're not worth that much money. And so the Cubs get him.
Allegedly.
Okay, one of 2 things happened. They said, you're not worth that much money. Go manage the Cubs. Or they didn't want him at all. Either way, it doesn't make me feel real good about our team's choice as a manager. This guy needs to go. I'm done with this type of baseball. This is ruining the sport. Baseball is about gut. Baseball is about feel. Baseball is the American way because it's always been about, you know what, you have to make tough decisions sometimes, and sometimes they don't work out, but at least you went with your gut. That's as American as it gets.
There's some unwritten rules in baseball. Number 1, you never change anything if you're in the middle of a streak.
No.
Number 2.
Not even underwear.
Number 2, you never, ever talk to somebody in the middle of a no-hitter. No. And number 3, you never pull a guy who's in the middle of a no-hitter.
But this is beyond this, though. This is with lineups. This is with pitching matchups. This is with everything.
Well, it's putting everybody on a pitch count.
It is. Baseball used to be what Major League said. You pull in a guy who's never done well against a hitter before, but I got a feeling he's due.
Mm-hmm.
That's all it is. That's all baseball is. You go by your gut. You've learned a lot in your career, and you go by your gut. The thing is, Counsell, the guys he played with in the 90s, they all would have hated him as a manager. Yeah. They would have punched him in the face. Can you imagine pulling out Randy Johnson when he's going for his perfect game? Pulling out Greg Maddux while he's going for a no-hitter. Tom Glavine, John Smoltz.
Nolan Ryan. He would have been punched in the because of whatever it says on a computer.
Right.
They just don't.
No, this is getting to be dumb. I mean, you have Japanese baseball where basically the robot was invented and they don't manage by robots. I just don't understand where in the brain of baseball players or baseball executives and all this nonsense got this idea that this is the way to do something. My question to you after all of this, when is this going to stop?
As soon as somebody who manages by his gut wins again. Although Houston,
Texas last year. Well, Houston doesn't count because Houston cheated.
Bang, bang, bang. But Texas last year is a good example. He managed.
Bruce Bochy managed by his gut.
Pat Murphy in Milwaukee right now is doing somewhat the same thing.
Dude, I want to see the Brewers win a World Series this year just because Craig Counsell isn't there anymore. Just because it would be the funniest thing to me in the world. Listen, I don't know how the guy is as a person. Maybe he's a saint. But he can't manage baseball. Go manage someplace else. I love the Cubs. I love baseball. Stay away from my team. Do it someplace else. I want to have David Ross back, who was a player and a manager afterwards, who was the heart and soul of our World Series team, who won with a team, again, that wasn't supposed to win, had all the momentum in the world going into the season. This would have been a different team.
It would have. Ross would have got this team together. I think there would have been a much better team.
We would have been minimum third place in the NL Central with David Ross as our manager.
Probably. And he would have found a way because he would have watched everything. I mean, he used analytics too. But
there's nothing wrong with using analytics to your advantage.
To prepare the game,
right.
Prepare the team. But when you get in there,
making decisions in a ball game,
let the game dictate it.
Yeah. Take off your cup and have some balls. Manage by your gut.
I think that says it all.
I'm sick and tired of this nonsense. Another thing that I know you're sick and tired of is uniforms in the All Star.
Oh my God. Okay. I grew up watching All Star games. The two leagues never faced each other during the regular season.
Right.
National League, American League players never saw each other.
Hold that thought. Let's just talk about uniforms.
I'm getting to that. One of the best parts of the entire game was seeing the opening lineups announced, and you got to see the different uniforms from every single team.
Yeah.
If the National League was a home team, they all wore their home uniforms. American League wore their road uniforms. It was awesome.
Yep.
Now we get to watch them wearing softball uniforms.
When I thought about this, because we talked about it last week, I'm like, why does this bother you so much? Why does this bother me in the game?
Mm-hmm.
And I realized what it is. Because we're not watching the players that represent a league. We're trying to watch the players that represent a team.
Correct.
And this has always been about your team being represented in the All Star game, not your league.
No, and it should go back to that. I want to see the uniforms I don't usually see. I want to, if it's the game, where is the game this year?
Texas.
Okay,
Arlington.
so it's in Arlington. So I want to see the Rangers in their home uniforms. I want to see the Rays in their home uniforms. I want to see the Brewers and the Cardinals and the Cubs in the road, and maybe mix it up and wear your alternate uniforms for that game. It'd look cool. But the uniforms they've got with their ironed on national or American and then their softball caps that they're wearing on their head are ugly. This is not a money grab because nobody buys these things.
Okay. I want to say one thing here.
Go ahead.
The uniforms this year
are ugly.
Cool.
No, they're not.
If they were stitched?
No, they're not.
If they were stitched?
No.
They'd look cool.
The American was much better than the national. I'll get you that.
They're both cool.
No, the hats are awful.
The hats are bad.
Hats are awful.
But the jerseys are cool.
No, they're not.
I'd wear those jerseys. I like the jerseys.
Don't encourage them. I want to see.
I'm not saying they should wear it during the game. I agree with you. But I am saying that they did a good job. If they were stitched, they would look great.
Do it in the home run derby.
You wouldn't wear that American League jersey.
It's a softball jersey.
Because it's not stitched. I'm saying if it was stitched.
It's also a pullover.
Okay, that's bad. If it was button up, and the letters actually matched like they're supposed to, and it was stitched,
We're talking about
you
me.
would wear that.
No, I wouldn't.
Those are cool. If they were done the right way, they'd be cool looking uniforms.
They've got
I like them. I'm not saying they should be worn on the field. I agree with you. The reason they do this is to sell more jerseys. So my thought is you need, like I said last week, you need to make an all-star game version of the team's uniform.
Fine, but
Like
make
it gold or something like that.
But have the Yankees come out in Yankee pinstripes.
Yeah, put some gold trim around it to make it an all-star game uniform.
Fine, I can live with that, but make it go back to wearing your regular uniforms so the fans of those teams can actually see their team.
I agree with you completely.
Because all you see is a little sewn-on patch on the sleeve with
I don't know
the
what team
logo.
they play for. I have no idea.
None.
You know what rule that bothers me that needs to be changed now? Like immediately.
It's maybe the same one I've had for years and years, but go ahead.
Not every team needs to be represented in the All-Star game.
It's the one I've had for years and years.
I don't get it. It's participation trophies for the team. It's another reason, by the way, to your point that they shouldn't be wearing the uniforms because it's about the teams. So if you want every team represented, then wouldn't you want to see every team's uniform represented so you know who these people play for so you can follow them? You'd think. But this is crazy. I remember back when I was younger, back in 2010, 2011, when Starlin Castro was making all-star teams. And the only reason he made an all-star team is because you needed a Cub to be represented during the all-star game, which is a joke because now you're booting somebody else. It's why for Hall of Fame voting, all-star games don't count.
No,
they don't look at them because they're a joke. One, the starters are fan voted, which, whatever. I don't agree with it, but I get why they do it.
I don't have a problem with that.
The starters, all those guys are going to be all-stars anyway, so it's fine.
The only team that should be guaranteed a spot is the stadium they're played in.
I was going to say, it's being hosted in Arlington where the Rangers play, so you have to have at least one Ranger represented at the All-Star.
I'm assuming there's multiple Rangers.
I don't know. They're a pretty bad team this year.
They'll still get one.
Same thing if you're in Miami, right? No Miami Marlins deserve to be an All-Star this year.
Right. No Chicago Cubs deserve to be an All-Star.
They got a couple guys. But just despite Craig Counsell, none of them should be invited to the All-Star game. But if it's in Miami, though, even if it's in Miami this year, you have to have a Marlin on the team.
Right.
You have to. It's the home stadium. You have to have at least one on the team in some capacity. He has to play in the game at some point. That needs to happen.
Classic example, 1975, the All-Star game was in Milwaukee.
Yeah.
We tried to get tickets. We didn't get tickets. Hank Aaron was put on that team.
Right.
Hank Aaron wore a Milwaukee Brewers uniform, and he got to play. He was the only one that was good enough at that time to be in the team.
And there was questioning at that point in Hank Aaron's career.
Still.
He probably shouldn't have been an all-star.
He's the best Milwaukee Brewer, and everybody wanted to see him.
And it's in Milwaukee.
It's in Milwaukee.
So you put him in there no matter what.
Right.
If it's in Seattle, you have to put a Mariner on there. That's the only time that a team should be forced to be represented in an all-star game.
This is
if your team's not good enough to have an all-star game, it's a pretty big wake-up call when you don't have anybody on the field during the all-star game.
Well, and theoretically, it's an all-star game, so you want to see the best of the best.
But you don't. People get snubbed every year.
I know.
And it's because of this stupid rule. This rule needs to change. I don't understand it. They don't do this in any other sport for their all-star games that I'm aware of. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't think I am.
It's a dumb rule. It has been a dumb rule for as long as I've been around, and they've had this rule. You're a good enough player to get in there.
Right.
Great. But if you're on a bad team and you're having a bad year, you shouldn't be on there.
One thing I also don't understand, like with the home run derby, there are people competing in the home run derby that aren't all-stars. It's the same with the dunk contest. You have people competing in the dunk contest that are in the G League.
I don't have the G League, I want to bring in minor leaguers. I don't have a problem with the home run derby because a guy could be a great home run hitter, but really doesn't deserve to be on the all-star team.
Then he shouldn't be in the home run derby.
Sometimes the regular players don't want to get into the home run derby.
I get that, but I think you should have to be an all-star to take part in All-Star Weekend.
I can live with them bringing in some of the, if you're going to screw around with it, that's where you can bring in somebody from a team that's not on the All-Star game.
Fine. I don't agree with it, but I get that point. but not every team should be forced to be represented. I mean, it's some participation trophy nonsense, and I get why you're doing it, but it's stupid. Like, these are the best players. If your team doesn't have a good player, because here's the thing. Say you put on some random player from a bad team that shouldn't have an all-star. They're not going to play.
Not usually.
So what's the point of having them on the team?
I mean, when I was watching All-Star games when I was a kid, the players that were voted in would play 2, 3, 4,
Right.
sometimes a whole game.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with that.
I
want
don't
to see
either.
the best of the best. I want to see.
It was also a different time when the National League didn't play the American League.
Of course they. Oh yeah, interleague play wasn't around, right? But they played the game to win. It meant a lot to win. And granted, player movement wasn't there, free agency wasn't a thing, so it lent itself to that.
Right. And again, the National League only played the National League during the regular season.
Correct.
And the American League only played the American League during the regular
So
season.
the only time you saw these players from other leagues was in the All-Star game or in the playoffs or World Series.
World Series, yeah.
Which
I'm not going to argue with you there. I want to say one more thing about the All-Star game, then I know we have other topics to talk about here.
Well, I've got a question to ask you, so go ahead.
You started to change my opinion on this old timers game nonsense you're talking about with one thing.
What?
The players in the old timers game have to wear their jerseys that they wore during their playing career.
Okay, fine.
That would be awesome.
I would love to see Robin Yount, Paul Molitor wearing their old Brewers jerseys.
Yes.
Love to see Greg Maddux wearing his old Braves stuff.
Or his old Cubs stuff.
Either one.
He'd wear a Cubs uniform.
He would, but he's a Brave.
I understand.
Bring in Pete Rose and he has to wear the Reds uniform or the Phillies uniform, whichever, or the Expos.
Right. Bring in John Lester, wear his
Andre
World
Dawson.
Series Boston Red Sox or World Series Cubs jersey.
Andre Dawson wears a Cubs jersey.
Yes, no matter how much they try and make him wear an Expo jersey.
Exactly.
That would be awesome. The issue with I also have another issue with the old timers game we're talking about, is that nobody's going to play real baseball. It's going to end up being softball anyway.
No, they played baseball. I mean, when they did it.
They did back then. It was a different type of people.
Yeah, it was Warren Spahn throwing to Luke Appling, and Luke Appling
These people
was
were
not going to give in.
tired getting hurt. And no pitcher at the mound is going to take a rocket back at him.
And that's where you'd have trouble. If Mark McGuire steps up and rips one at
You'd have to have
rifle
something in front of the pitcher.
You'd have to.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to see anybody get hurt in an old timers game. And that's probably why they've stopped it, but it was so much fun. Okay. I had gotten into an argument with a viewer.
Okay.
Very big argument. He would not let this. I mean, it was a dog with a bone.
Yeah.
His argument was that the Raleigh Fingers, Mariano Rivera's, Goose Gossage's, Bruce Suitors of the world should not be in the Hall of Fame because they weren't the best pitchers on their team. The starters are the ones who have to pitch the most, so they're the best pitchers on their teams, so they're the only ones that should qualify.
Okay.
I tried to point out to him that Raleigh Fingers actually won the Cy Young and MVP in the same year.
He shouldn't have. He only pitched 3 innings.
About 4 times a week.
Okay.
He was in there all the time, and he would save these games from the pitchers who couldn't go long enough.
Yeah, the pitchers who started the work. Yeah, we call that a vulture.
Wasn't a vulture. Come in with the bases loaded, he'd get out of it, and then he'd continue to pitch.
I agree with the viewer.
The viewer is stupid, and the viewer is wrong because these guys...
I wouldn't call our viewers stupid.
They aren't. He's ridiculous. These guys are still pitchers, and they're the best of the best pitchers for what they do. Especially in today's game. I don't agree with what goes on in today's game, where the pitcher, if he goes 5, is considered having a great game.
Yeah.
But the relievers, especially since the 1970s, and they had relievers before then. Hoyt Wilhelm was back in the 60s, and he was a great reliever. But these are top-of-the-line Hall of Fame pitchers. They just chose their pitcher in a different part of the game. And they counted for as many wins in some cases as some of the starters. And certainly a lot of saves.
You know, initially I want to agree with you on this, but the more I think about it, He's got something.
He's got nothing. If you're a relief pitcher and you're there to fill that end of the game position, you're still a pitcher.
I'm not saying you're not a pitcher.
And he was saying that they're just role players.
But they are role players. You just said that they're role players.
They're still pitchers.
Yeah.
I specifically didn't say they were role players because I don't think they are. They're pitchers that come in a different part of the game.
They are role players.
Yeah, they come in a different part of the game.
That's their role, which makes them a role player.
When you can save as many games as they did in a season, they deserve he was saying they don't belong in the Hall of Fame, and they do.
I think that's dumb.
They do belong in the Hall of Fame.
They're definitely Hall of Fame players. But does any you always talk about that small room in the Hall of Fame. Does any reliever belong in that small room? Any closer belong in that small room in the Hall of Fame?
I don't think Mariano Rivera does, and I don't think Mariano Rivera should have been the first player to ever be unanimously elected into the Hall of Fame because he pitched one inning.
Right.
To the Raleigh Fingers, who revolutionized the reliever role.
See, I think this is just more about
he gets into that small room.
Being in love with Raleigh Fingers.
No,
I think that's what
because I don't think his number should be retired in Milwaukee. I really don't. He was only there for a short time. Right. I think of Raleigh Fingers, he's in Oakland A. That's where he developed the reliever role. He went to San Diego after that. He did a great job down there. Raleigh Fingers was the best reliever and reinvented that role in the 1970s. And then along came Goose Gossage. And then Bruce Sutter, when he was taught the split finger fastball by Roger Craig, just took it to a whole nother level. He was a shutdown guy with the exception of the Ryan Sandberg game, which still is one of my favorite games of all time.
Yes.
So,
I mean, I think it's silly to say that they don't belong in the Hall of Fame. They were some of the greatest pitchers of their generation.
Yes, they were.
But I do agree with the fact that at least it should be seen, because this is my problem with pitching nowadays, right? People get obsessed with those closers. They should be seen as a different breed of pitcher. Like your studs are the starters. Those are the best pitchers in the game. Those are your stars of the game. The reliever is simply a role player.
Well, the relievers, Craig Maddox is a stud. Tom Glavine was a stud.
Yeah.
But when you get to that third, fourth, and fifth pitcher on
that's a role player.
They aren't expected to go 8 or 9.
They're not.
They're going to go 5, 6, and
but
then you have to bring somebody in.
It's a problem today, and I think this is what the viewer you were arguing with is talking about. Because I agree that the relievers are looked at now. Closers are seen as more important than starters right now.
Well, and I've got a problem with you bringing a different pitcher from the 5th inning on.
Correct.
That's wrong.
Correct. Like if you have a pitcher that can go 7 on a regular basis and do it well, that is much more impressive than a guy who can come in for 3 innings and just pitch.
Well, except when that pitcher has to come in 3 or 4 times a week and has to face people from the 6th or 7th inning on.
Yeah.
It's not.
You're obsessed with Raleigh Fingers.
No, I'm not. I'm Goose Gossage, Bruce Sutter, all of them did that. The problem I have is guys that if they go 5 innings, they're pulled.
Right.
Got to save that arm.
And you go 1, 1, 1,
1, 1, 1, 1. And that's, I hate.
I agree. I'm just saying it's a different. Baseball needs to look at these relievers differently than they do starters. The problem is the reliever has become more important than the guy who's actually starting. They're all looked at as relievers.
That I'm not arguing with. They've got to go back to.
I think that's the person's point.
No, it was definitely not the person's point.
Well, that should have been their point. Because starters are the stars of the game, and they should be looked at that again.
Exactly.
Bob Gibson is better than a Raleigh Fingers. Raleigh Fingers, let's use this for an argument, is the best reliever of all time, right? Or Mariano Rivera is the best closer of all time.
He pitched 1 inning.
I understand. That's what I'm saying. Say he's the best reliever of all time for argument's sake. Say Raleigh Fingers, Goose Gossage are the best relievers of all time. They don't rank in that pitching room for the worst. The worst starter in the Hall of Fame is better, in my opinion, than the best reliever in the Hall of Fame.
I don't think so. I mean, yes, is Bob Gibson better?
If you're starting a team, would you rather have Bob Gibson or Mariano Rivera?
Well,
or Raleigh Fingers or Goose Gossage? Would you rather have Warren Spahn? Would you rather have Clayton Kershaw? or Mariano Rivera?
If I'm,
Would you rather have Greg Maddux
You're gonna let me
or
answer.
Mariano Rivera?
I want those guys as my starters, but
You can pick one.
you're gonna need a reliever.
Okay,
Almost.
but I'm telling you, you can pick one. You can have another reliever. Would you take Greg Maddux or Rowley Fingers?
You're picking the guys that are the best of the absolute best. Would I take a Rowley Finger over a Nolan Ryan? That'd be a real close argument.
Okay, but that's your opinion on Nolan Ryan.
Yeah.
That's different. You have a weird opinion on Nolan Ryan.
Because he wasn't.
You're not answering my question.
It depends. It depends on the pitcher you're putting me up against. Would I take Rowley Fingers over?
We talked about cognitive ability about a presidential debate. This is what they do. I just want you to answer a question.
I am.
Would you rather have Greg Maddux or Rowley Fingers or Mariano Rivera? Who would you rather? You can't have the other one.
I'd obviously take Greg Maddux.
Okay. Would you rather have a Tom Glavine or a Goose Gossage if you can only have one?
Again, Glavine was the guy that would go 9, so I'd go in Glavine.
Okay. Would you rather have a Clayton Kershaw or Mariano Rivera?
I'd go with Kershaw.
So the starters are more important than relievers.
Hold on. You're talking nothing but number ones. Go down on the staff a little bit.
I'm not saying number ones. I'm saying which would you rather have? I am showing you that it's better to have an all-time great starter than it is to have an all-time great reliever.
Nobody's
because
arguing.
The starter's got to get you there.
Yeah, I'm not arguing that. Yes, I'd want an all-time great starter. However, I'm going to have an all-time great reliever on my 10-person pitching staff.
I understand what you want in a perfect world.
No, I'm going to have
you options.
I'm going to.
You could have one or the other.
Depends on the staff.
Really?
That everybody is going to need a. You're going to always have 5 starters. You're going to have 5 starters. If it's going to be the number one versus a number one reliever, I'm going to take the starter every time.
Okay.
But if it's a number 2,
5-person staff.
Here's one. Mike Caldwell, former Milwaukee Brewer, almost won the Cy Young Award.
Sure.
I would take Rowley Fingers over Mike Caldwell.
Okay, or a Ben Sheets would be an example that I know.
Take Rowley Fingers.
Okay, I can see that. But honestly, at their prime, when Ben Sheets was going 200 innings?
I'd still take Rowley Fingers. Because I know Ben Sheets wasn't going to get me that many innings all the time, and he wasn't going to work a full game.
He was injury prone.
It's an interesting argument.
Roger Clemens, 5-person staff. Let me give you this, okay? There's a 5-person staff. There's 5 other pitchers. Roger Clemens is one of your starters. The other one...
He would have been the number...
Hold on.
He would have been a number 1 or 2.
Roger Clemens is your number 1 pitcher. He's one of the greatest pitchers of all time, okay? You have Roger Clemens as your starter, but your 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th guys are not nearly as good as Roger Clemens. And you have a choice. Do you take Roger Clemens or do you take any reliever?
I wouldn't take any reliever. I'd take an all-time great reliever.
That's what I'm saying. I'm giving you any of the all-time greats. A Mariano Rivera, Rowley Fingers, a Goose Gossage.
In that case, if I've got one great pitcher and 4 mediocre ones, I'm taking the reliever over Roger Clemens. You're out of your
damn mind.
I am.
Because the answer is now you get another mediocre starter who's never going to get you there.
How many times is Roger Clemens going to appear in a season? 25. Rowley Fingers is going to appear.
But now you're in the playoffs.
Yeah, and you're going to hate me for saying this. The Brewers lost the World Series because they didn't have their reliever.
No, the Brewers lost a World... Well, that's a different story.
Yeah, they lost the World Series because Rowley Fingers was hurt and they had to go with Pete Ladd.
If their starters would have done the job they're supposed to, if you would have had an all-time great starter going Game 7, you didn't have an all-time great starter on that Brewers team.
My point exactly. They had some really good pitchers, but they didn't have anybody like a Greg Maddux.
Okay, but if you would have had Greg Maddux going Game 7 of that World Series, Rowley Fingers isn't needed.
You can't say that because even great starters at some point are going to, especially in a World Series,
Okay.
Wait a minute, a 7-game World Series. You got Maddux going 1, 4, and 7.
Right.
He may need to
be released at 7.
I know.
In 1982 for the Brewers, you have prime Greg Maddux that you
not
can
a-
have starting. I'm putting
I know.
people in times so people know who we're talking
Right.
about. You have a prime Greg Maddux. We magically take him from the 90s and put him in 82. Okay. You're telling me you would rather have that staff go that you had and have Rowley Fingers rather than have a prime Greg Maddux going in game 7.
And here's the reason why.
Oh my God.
Here's-
This is why this guy argued with
No,
you.
here's the reason why. Yes, Maddox would have won 1 and 4 for sure,
Yeah. And he
Right.
would have won 7.
but he wasn't going to win any of the other ones.
Really?
None of those other pitchers were doing that well, and he needed relief. I'm just saying.
You are out of your damn mind.
No,
you
I'm
are
not.
what is wrong with baseball
No,
today.
I'm not. No,
this
I'm not.
is why the viewer
Hold on.
argued with
Hold
you.
on. I don't want a reliever to just pitch 1 inning.
Listen, I don't know who this viewer is, but you're right.
No,
Because
he's
this
not.
is stupid.
No, it's not.
This is dumb.
Well, your arguments are dumb because you're just telling me, okay, it's Greg Maddux on your team, or you can have Rowley Fingers on your team.
Right, because that's the point.
But look at that Braves roster. They had Greg Maddux. They had Tom Glavine.
And they had John Smoltz. They had
Who's it?
one of the greatest pitching staffs of all
Hold
time.
on. What did they do with John Smoltz?
They
made
made
him a reliever.
They did. I'm not saying a reliever isn't important, but I would rather have an all-time great starter and a middle-of-the-road reliever than have an all-time great reliever and a middle-of-the-road starter.
No. Well, if you can have Greg Maddux, you're going to take Greg Maddux every time. He's the greatest pitcher of his generation. Rowley Fingers was in that conversation. So was Bruce Sutter. They were the greatest pitchers of their generation.
I don't think they can qualify as the greatest pitchers of their generation because they were relievers. And that's the point
not-
the person you were
that's
talking
not
to is
true,
making.
though.
That is
true.
true.
He won the Cy Young and the MVP in the same year. He was, by definition, the most valuable player.
Who was second place and what were their stats for MVP?
No idea.
Right. I mean, sometimes people win because there's no other option.
No, there were other options.
I doubt it. I doubt it.
Sorry I went down that squirrel path, but
I'm
obviously
still dumbfounded at the fact that you think what you're saying is true.
it is true. I've watched enough baseball. I need a good reliever on my team.
Yeah, that's fair. But if I can have great starters and terrible relievers, I'd
Okay,
rather have great
hold on.
starters.
My point is those great relievers have every bit as many as right to the Hall of Fame as an all-time great starter.
Listen, I'd rather have a horse that can take me a mile than a horse that can take me 10 feet.
Okay.
A starter's a horse that can take me a mile. A reliever is a horse that can, they're going to get me 10 feet, 100 feet really fast.
Or give me a reliever that can take over in case that horse comes up lame.
No, don't take my analogy from me.
It worked.
It didn't work. You'd
It worked
rather have the
very
horse
well.
that can take you a mile than a horse that can get you 100 feet really fast.
Both are important roles. Both deserve to be in the Hall of Fame.
I'm not saying they're not Hall of Famers. I agree with you.
Okay,
Relievers should be in the Hall of
That's
Fame.
my whole point.
But my point is that a all-time great starter outranks any all-time great reliever. And it's not even close. And I'd try to get you to find an all-time great reliever that disagrees with me.
Oh, I think we could find that.
I don't think so. You let us know what you think in the comments below. And while you're down there, like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you get to enjoy this show as much as we enjoy making it, even when my father makes moronic.
Because those Oakland A teams don't win the World Series they did without Rowley Fingers.
I'm not saying they do, but they don't win without starting pitching either. I'm not
No, you
saying
gotta
Rowley
have
Fingers
both.
isn't an all-time great.
You got to have both.
I am saying all-time great pitcher outweighs all-time great reliever.
And I'll say that's apples and oranges.
You're out of your damn mind.
No,
out of
I'm
your
not.
damn mind. We have
Anyways.
some things happening in the NFL
Yes.
that I don't agree with.
Oh, there's a shock.
I agree with a lot of people. I'm a very agreeable person.
Except on this show.
Yeah, and in life in general. But people are coming out and saying Caleb Williams is now the best quarterback in the NFC North. Agree or disagree?
Let him throw a pass in the league before we're going to crown him
But here's the problem with this is what makes football so exciting and why people follow it so closely. Potential in the NFL is more exciting than actual results.
I would put him at number 3 in the NFC North today, behind Jared Goff and Jordan Love, but ahead of Sam Darnold in Minnesota. And yes, I'm going on potential there, but I think he's a better athlete.
I don't know if I put him in the top 3. I think he might be 4th, but there is a lot of potential there with this kid.
There is with Daniels as well in Washington.
Yeah, I agree.
Give me
But I'm
Love.
saying there's a lot of people in the NFL right now. This is what's so interesting. You look at Dallas, right? You have Dak Prescott, prospect. Dak Prescott, who we know what he is. He's an NFL starting quarterback.
Absolutely.
Would people in Dallas rather have Dak Prescott or Caleb Williams?
Caleb Williams. I hate to say it, but they would. They've got a guy who's gotten you to 12-5 the last 3 years, and they would trade it all if they could get Caleb Williams.
You have Brock Purdy, who's taking you to a Super Bowl and has been very effective in the playoffs. Would San Francisco rather have Brock Purdy or Caleb Williams?
Caleb Williams. It's ridiculous.
You have, let me ask you this, New York Jets. They have Aaron Rodgers coming off an injury.
They'll take Caleb Williams.
In the NFL, potential is more exciting than actual results.
And how many times have we seen a can't-miss quarterback fail miserably?
I agree. If you go back in time when Jamarcus Russell was drafted, you could find 20 teams in the NFL whose fan bases would rather have Jamarcus Russell than the quarterback that they had. Now, obviously, once he didn't try, people changed their mind. Ryan Leaf, another prime example. Ryan Leaf should have been better than he was. But again, his attitude got in the way.
He too much, too fast.
Yes.
I think if he would have been drafted in the 2nd or 3rd round, he would have been that guy to fall.
Yeah.
Would have been the best thing that ever happened to him.
I think the same thing with Jamarcus Russell. I think the same thing for a lot of these number 1 overall picks because they would actually have a chance to develop.
Over 50% of the drafted QBs fail.
But if you look at potential right now, because we don't have actual results. So Caleb Williams has the potential to be better than any quarterback in the NFC North. And because we haven't seen him, people can easily say, well, he has the potential to do it, so clearly he is.
Oh, Bears fans are in heaven right now.
I don't know why. I still think this kid's got bust written all over him. But we'll see. There's one defensive player that came out. I don't even know who it was. I saw it in passing where he said, every time I see him, I'm going to tell him I can't wait to see his painted nails on the ground.
Oh, my God. Yeah, Caleb Williams, besides his number on the back of his jersey, has a giant target.
Happened to Reggie Bush. People call him the Golden Boy. You better believe defensive said, hey, Golden Boy, how you doing down there on the ground?
Exactly. And we're going to make sure you stay down there a whole lot.
Right. But potential is more exciting than actual results. Bears fans would rather live in this world of Caleb Williams being the greatest, possibly the greatest quarterback of all time than actually see what he does on the field. Because right now you get to live in fantasy land.
Right. What happens after?
So it doesn't surprise me that people are crowning him as the best quarterback in the NFC North right now because there's no evidence to say that he won't be.
Every time I hear that, I think of Dennis, head coach for Arizona. If you want to crown their ass, then crown him.
Yeah.
And Caleb Williams may be a generational quarterback. Who knows?
He's a generational talent.
Maybe.
Well, he is. I mean, there's very few people that are athletes like Caleb Williams.
Correct. But you got to believe there's a lot of Packer defensive players. There's a lot of Lion players that are going to be teeing off, and they're going to be headhunting.
I hope all Packers defensive players feel that way.
And I know all Lions
I don't want
players,
any of my defensive players to be fans of any quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah, but there's going to be a special kind of dislike for this guy.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, the dude showed up with pink nail polish to a basketball game.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's...
The last thing
Why would you do that?
The last thing you want to be as a quarterback is flamboyant. And I'm not saying anything against what he wants to wear.
The only thing worse is a kicker that's flamboyant. I mean,
True, but most of those
Because
guys
they don't even think they're football players.
most players don't think they are. McAfee being the exception, who really was a football player.
That dude could hit people.
Yes, he could.
He's still a kicker.
He was.
But he's the toughest kicker probably to ever play the game.
Probably.
It's potential, though. I mean, this is what this is. Right now, Caleb Williams, based on potential, is the best quarterback in the NFC North. Simply because he has the potential to be that.
Yeah, but I will take results from Goff and from Love over that potential all day long.
I will too. But him potentially being the best quarterback in the NFC North is all people talk about. People in the NFL love potential much more than they love results. I mean, you look at it, like I said, Aaron Rodgers, a Super Bowl winning quarterback, a first ballot Hall of Famer. People in New York right now would much rather have Caleb Williams than Aaron Rodgers.
You know what the Bears are going to get if Caleb Williams is a successful quarterback? They'll have their first ever successful quarterback.
They had Sid Luckman back in the day.
Exactly, my point.
McMahon was a good quarterback. He got hurt.
He was a good quarterback. He got hurt by Charles Martin.
That Charles Martin hit. I found out why that happened, by the way.
Why?
So the Bears were playing in Lambeau earlier in the year. Jim McMahon threw a touchdown and then went and flipped off Forrest Gregg after the touchdown.
Oh.
Gave him the finger.
Wrong person to do that to.
And so Charles Martin walked out in the game. His towel had numbers and names written on them when he walked out in the game for everybody to see. And McMahon was one of them. And so he had a hit list. So that's why Forrest Gregg called the hit on Jim McMahon. It's because Jim McMahon flipped him off after he threw a touchdown to the fridge.
Still the dirtiest play in the history of football.
Oh, it never should have happened. I didn't know the first part. And that doesn't excuse the action.
It doesn't excuse it.
I thought that was an interesting story that came behind it. The Packers, by the way, also during that rivalry in the 80s, they came to Lambeau when Forrest Gregg was coach. And in the coach's office, in the visiting locker room, he put a pile of horse manure in his office.
Who did that?
Forrest Gregg did that to
Mike Ditka?
Mike Ditka.
Well, Ditka and Forrest Gregg never liked each other.
No.
And at that point in time, Chicago was the hammer and the Packers were the nail.
Yeah, they were a bad team for a while there.
Yeah, 29 years.
Never lived through it. I've gone Hall of Fame quarterback to Hall of Fame quarterback to Hall of Fame quarterback.
Maybe.
Hey, potential.
Yeah.
We just talked about this. He has the potential to be a Hall of Fame quarterback. Therefore, he is a Hall of Fame quarterback until proven otherwise.
I also heard today I was watching Cowherd, and the guest, and I can't remember his name, I apologize, but said that his pick for the NFC representative in the Super Bowl is the Detroit Lions. They were talking about the 12 teams.
I can see that.
The 12 teams that had the best chance to get to the Super Bowl. Green Bay was one of those teams.
Yeah.
He thought the 49ers would take a step back because they lost in the Super Bowl.
I don't think it's because they lost in the Super Bowl. I think they're dealing with what every successful team deals with, and that's at some point you have to write a check. And you have Brandon Ayuk, who's one of your best players, who wants to get paid, and San Francisco's paid a lot of players already. And so you have Brandon Ayuk, you have Deebo Samuel, and they both want to get paid.
Right.
I don't blame them. Nick Bosa on that team and a lot of other really good young players that all want to get paid.
You can't pay them all.
You can't pay them all. And so you're dealing with this juggling act where you're trying to tell these players, listen, we still have you under contract for another year. And they're like, well, I'm not playing another year until I get paid.
Right.
And I think that's going to start to affect the locker room.
It can't help but affect it. Or it's going to affect those players' attitudes.
And it's going to cause Brock Purdy to take a step back and come down to reality a little bit. So I can definitely see, to no fault of Kyle Shanahan, to no fault of anybody, it's just the business of the NFL. And at some point, these players need to look out for themselves and focus on getting paid. And you're going to start to see that trickle into the San Francisco locker room. And we've seen that with a lot of Super Bowl teams.
Sure. It's going to happen.
It's either injuries or the team has gotten really good now. Look at Cincinnati. They're fighting with T. Higgins right now, who's going to play on the franchise tag. But this will be his last year in Cincinnati. And who knows how much effort he actually gives on a franchise tag because he doesn't want to get hurt.
No, but the money they get on the franchise tag is a lot of money.
It is a lot of money. And I don't say, like, you're getting paid to do a job, go do your job. But I also understand the players saying, listen, I want some long-term security because I'm looking for generational money right now. And I don't want to risk that going full speed out in an NFL field.
Green Bay is going to be in that position in 3 years.
Green Bay is going to be in that position next year.
No, because not all of them are coming due at the same time, but you've got all those wide receivers.
I know, but if all of a sudden Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs have breakout years this year,
yeah,
Christian Watson's going to say, where's my paycheck? And Romeo Doubs is going to be in that same conversation.
Going to have a lot of work. I still think Reed is the number one receiver on that team.
I agree. And you got a couple years with him, but the Packers, and maybe it's 2 years, but the next couple years are going to have to start making those decisions as well. So San Francisco is definitely going to take a step back simply because of the contract issues they're already starting to deal with.
The NFC North is going to be fun to watch because you have Detroit and Green Bay, both very good teams. It's all going to depend on the play of Jordan Love. And he still hasn't gotten his contract yet. We need to get Russ on in the next couple weeks.
Yes, I 100% agree with the NFL coming up. I do have one more question. I know we're running short on time.
No, we're good.
I want to make sure I ask this. Steph Curry made a comment the other day saying that the Warriors are the last NBA dynasty that will ever exist.
I don't think that's the case.
I do.
I don't.
I think he has something there.
You're going to find another team that's going to be able to put the core of 3 players together.
It drafts and develops?
Sure.
Listen, we're talking about dynasties as in what the Celtics had, as in what the Lakers had, as in what the Bulls had 2 separate times.
Right.
Because that's 2 separate dynasties there.
Yes.
Because you had one with Horace Grant.
You had another with
Dennis Rodman.
Right. And then you had Tony Kukoc in the second half. You had Steve Kerr in the first half.
Right.
You have to have a core.
Steve Kerr was in the second half too. John Paxton was.
All right, John Paxton. I'm sorry. You've got to have a core of 2 or 3 players that are going to lead everybody.
Yes.
And they've got to be there. Giannis and Chris Middleton are much older when they came into their own.
Yeah.
So they aren't going to qualify.
No.
But there'll be other teams.
Well, they're not a dynasty. The only one, if Drew Holiday, Chris Middleton, and Giannis would have won 2 or 3 championships together, that's a dynasty.
Yeah, but that's not going to happen. But can you say that a very young Knicks team couldn't be that dynasty? Boston could come back and win again.
Here's the reason that he's saying this, and this is what I agree with. You have a lot of superstars going around different places now. Mm-hmm. Now, the Celtics could have another dynasty here because they have Tatum, they have Brown, and they had Porzingis on this one. I don't think he's ever playing again. He's hurt. But you could make a dynasty out of that. But the problem is Brown going to stay with the Celtics, or is he going to leave? Because that's happening a lot. I want a max contract. I can't give you both a max contract and still build a team. Okay, I'm going to go over here where I can get a max contract.
And that's what's going.
Money's more important than legacy with a lot of these players.
For some players, other players, it's not.
It's not if you're the number one guy, it's not. Look at Tom Brady. Tom Brady took quote unquote pay cuts. Sure. He still made plenty of money and endorsements and other things. But he was the number one guy.
Yes.
It was his team. So it's the number one guy taking a pay cut. Look at LeBron James in Miami. He took less money than Chris Bosh and Dwayne Wade in Miami, but he was the number one guy. It was his legacy that he was worried about. You look at Jaylen Brown in Boston. Tatum just got paid a max contract.
Mm-hmm.
Is Jaylen Brown going to take less money to play second fiddle because it's not his legacy, it's Jason Tatum's legacy?
Somebody will come along and another group of players will be on a team that are going to win 3 and 9 years.
But the leader has to be the one to take the pay cut. And I don't see that happening a lot anymore.
Again,
LeBron James was willing to, until recently, he was never the highest paid player on his team.
Right. But he was also
his legacy.
And he was also a billionaire outside.
He was, but that was his legacy.
Correct.
Right? The Miami teams are LeBron's legacy, not Dwayne Wade's legacy, not Chris Bosh's legacy.
There's still going to be teams that are going to come in. It's happened in every generation. There will be another dynasty in basketball in another generation.
That wins 3 and 4 years or 3 and 5 years?
I think there will be. I
mean,
just
because
do.
you had the Spurs where it was the same team, really,
Correct.
for 5 championships.
They were a dynasty.
Well, 4 of them, because you had the Admiral in the first one,
right.
and then they went
he
out.
retired.
Then they went on with the rest of them. So really 4 in Tim Duncan's career. But that was really the same core. You had Ginobili, you had Parker, and you had
Tim
Duncan.
Yeah.
That's never going to happen again.
It will happen again.
That's never going to happen.
It will happen again.
No way.
Yes.
There
will be a dynasty made up of guys that have been drafted or brought in as a young player. I've seen it happen too often.
You have to win 3 in a row. You have to do what the Bulls did.
You don't have to win 3 in a row.
You do, because
dynasty?
otherwise they're going to leave. If you're not winning, I'm going to go get paid.
Are the Lakers and the Celtics from the 80s, were they dynasty teams?
Yes, but it's the same core of people. I'm saying in today's game, if you're not consistently winning, look what happened to the Bucks core. They didn't win for 2 years, and all of a sudden, they're getting rid of pieces.
Except for the fact that Giannis came into his championship towards the end of his career.
Giannis is 29 years old. He won when he was 27.
And he got hurt the last 2 years. He's been playing for...
He's at the end of his career when he's 29 years old.
He's been playing for 15 years.
No, 10.
10 years. 10 years.
10, 11, something like that.
I'm just saying, there'll be a team like Steph Curry and
Klay Thompson, Draymond Green.
They were all young at the same time, all ended up on that team, and they will ride it out. Winning cures all. And there will be another team that will win like that.
You all had Klay Thompson, who was willing to take less money.
You're going to find that again. There's still guys that are going to want the championships more than the money. They're going to think,
if you're the number one guy, sure.
No, there are going to be other guys that are going to go, you know what? I need the ring. That's my legacy. The money is generational no matter what I'm making.
So I really don't.
These guys are making 20, 30 million a year.
Yeah. When they could be making 50, 60 on another team.
And some people will say, I want the money. Other people will say, give me the 30 and give me a ring.
You're in that situation. You're telling me you're looking at an extra $30 million a year, and you're going to say no to that to win a game?
To win a
I'm going
championship.
to change my family's entire future over a game?
You're changing it over $30 million. Well, look, if somebody tosses $50 million, I'm going to think about it. But other players and athletes' mentality is completely different.
I don't think it is.
I do.
There's some players that are like that. And people at the end of their careers, you look at a Chris Paul or a Dwayne Wade or a lot of these other guys go and
chase the championship
because they're in. J.R. Smith is a prime example. He made his money in New York. And now he's set, and he's not going to get that much money anyways, so I might as well take $1 million less to go and chase a championship. That's a different ballgame. He already made his money.
There will be another dynasty in the NBA. That's all I'm saying.
I don't think so. I think Steph Curry is right. I don't see it happening, but you let us know what you think in the comments below. And while you're down there, like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you get to enjoy this show as much as we enjoy making it. You and I have had a great show today.
People are going to start to question whether we even like each other.
We don't.
As much as we fight.
We don't. That's the reality of this situation.
Yeah, it is, kind
of. I don't know where to go from here. I was on a roll. You screwed me up.
Yeah, that was my job.
This is why we don't like each other. Right here. As you all know, you cannot have a conversation with your father with, unfortunately, in this situation, your dad getting the last word. So it is all you.
So Caitlin Clark became the first rookie in the WNBA to ever score a triple-double. What I've been noticing watching a lot of the Fever games is that there aren't the players around her that can handle the types of passes she's thrown at these people. She's a different kind of talent that WNBA has never seen. Players around her are going to have to step up their game quite a bit, or the Fever are going to have to bring in other players that are capable of playing close to the level of Caitlin Clark. The jealousy in the WNBA has to stop, and they have to just be grateful that a once-in-a-lifetime, once-in-a-generation talent has come along and is blessing their league right now, because Caitlin Clark is doing things I've never, ever seen before and is actually making the WNBA fun to watch. Which, for most guys who watch the NBA and NFL and baseball, hasn't happened so far in the 25 years the WNBA has been around. They've got a brand new audience. They better capitalize on it while Caitlin Clark is there, or they'll lose the league and they'll just go back to what they were before, having to live off the NBA's money. That's it.
Well done.
Thank you.
Short, sweet, to the point. Something I'm not used to. Thank you so much, as always, for watching. This has been Sports Talk with Dad. We'll see you next time.
Bye, everybody.